What's going on, everybody? Hope you are all doing well today. The stream on a Friday. Not a Friday, it's Monday. What am I talking about? Tell me I don't know the days of the week. How are you all doing today? I'm the Notorious Base. I do a lot of challenge runs and no damage runs over here on YouTube. But recently we've changed up the game as to how we're going to be streaming for a little while, just discussing a lot of Resident Evil information, news, leaks, rumors, and anything Capcom, and also Silent Hill. So freaking ready. What's going on, Gemini? Hope you're doing well, my brother. Lucy, how are you? Hello. Mr. Tibbs, greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Tibbs here, ready to support our brother Base. Yay, says Lily the cat. Hello. Noble's going to be late. Do not worry about it, my friend. Whether you make the stream or not, it is appreciated that you are here. Oh man, oh man, oh man. All right. It's a pleasure to have everybody here tonight. You could always find me here at youtube.com/notoriousbase. So we're going to be diving in today to more of the retrospective world. Okay, and a lot of what we discussed last time was circling around Resident Evil 9 and some of its remakes that are due out, right? We heard a lot of information and watched a lot of videos discussing that. Hi MB, hi Lucy, very hello to you Lily, hope you are doing wonderful tonight. This is different? Absolutely. Yeah, we're gonna just chill out, have some conversation with some Resident Evil music playing in the background, and just have some, like I said, conversation about Resident Evil. So, as many of you may not yet know or do know, we have the Resident Evil 1.5 retrospective in short form now, under the shorts column of the YouTube channel, and we will be covering all mainline Resident Evils in a retrospective fashion, so stay tuned for the next one that'll be coming out later this week. Perfect time to take a break from my study to talk some Resident Evil. Nothing better, right? On a Monday? I said Friday. I wish it was Friday. I think that's why Friday was in my head. But anyway, let's get right into this conversation. We're going to start from the ground up. And what better way to start with looking back is with a retrospective. And a fantastic YouTuber by the name of Avalanche Reviews, who I implore all of you to go check out. I will link his video in the description of this live stream at the end of it, giving him the praise that he rightfully deserves. We're going to be looking at his Resident Evil 1 retrospective. Yeah, I really could use the weekend, Lily. I could tell you that right now. I don't even know what day it is, and the week just started. So again, Avalanche Reviews. He has a lot of content on his channel with a plethora of different YouTube videos, retrospectives, games that literally are Resident Evil clones. And he covers a lot of retrospectives on Silent Hill and Resident Evil. So again, while we're talking, we'll have the Resident Evil music playing. But the first question I want to ask all of you in the chat, what is your favorite Resident Evil game? You don't even have to give a reason why. What is your favorite Resident Evil game to watch or play? Hey everyone, it's good to hear what you've got cooking in that brilliant mind of yours, Base, and I think we know mine, and it's CVX. Absolutely, and an excellent choice. Would love to hear some of your lore dropped right here on the stream. Either RE2 or RE4 remakes or OGs worked for me. Absolutely, right? I mean, Resident Evil 2 really hit the nail on the head with what a remake should look like in this day and age. And the Resident Evil 4 remake, I mean, that just took the world by storm, right? I mean, a game that was already nearly perfect became even more perfect. I didn't even think that was possible. I like playing 4, but I'm not very good. Hey, doesn't matter the skill. It matters that you're enjoying the game, right? The story, the ambience, the characters, the development. Resident Evil 4 has a very special place in my heart, right? Because that is the first Resident Evil game I beat on my own. I never played any myself, but I like watching you play RE2 a lot. Yeah, right? RE2 is a great one, whether it's the OG or the remake. I mean, they're just fantastic piece of art. You know, growing up, I used to watch my dad play a lot of the classic trilogy. And then when I was about 10 or 11 years old, I was finally old enough to play the first Resident Evil that I got to get for my birthday or around my birthday, and that happened to be Resident Evil 4. And man, 2005, what a year, right? I don't even know if all of us were old enough to even remember 2005, but let me tell you something. When Resident Evil 4 dropped, oh my goodness, the storm that followed, the changing in direction of gaming as we knew it, right? Everything that we enjoyed. I love the story of Resident Evil. All of them make me smile. I said smile because I'm reading the next line, especially when I don't have to be scared myself. Now, exactly. Now, one thing I like to point out about it being scary, right? Put this into perspective. What's more scary? The monsters or not having enough ammo or resources to fend off the monsters? That is a real question. That's a real topic. Because that's what makes the survival horror aspect of Resident Evil so intricate, right? Yeah, it's a zombie game. Yeah, we know all that. But what makes it stand out comparatively to most? Well, number one, its graphics, its ambience, its soundtracks, they're just phenomenal. I think a CVXR remake will have a clone storyline, but I think Alfred will have more of a psychosis, more seeing Alexia, rather than trying to be her. I think Wesker will have the Separate Ways DLC mode as well. Ooh. Monsters! Yeah, honestly, that is a really, really good theory. What makes you say the thing about Separate Ways DLC? What makes you think they won't bring back the battle mode? You think the battle mode didn't do as well as originally anticipated? And I could completely understand the Alfred part. Because obviously they got to rework the Alfred part just because of the day and age and, where the story was in 2000 when the game first dropped. What's socially acceptable now will not be socially acceptable as what it was back then, right? Times change and, so do norms, and we move on from certain things, and obviously they may have to rework Alfred and Alexia's story a bit. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to get started by watching Mr. Avalanche Review's 12-minute Resident Evil 1 Original RE Retrospective. And we're going to break down parts of it, and we're going to go into a discussion about Resident Evil 1 and really how the story of Resident Evil came to be. Because just so you guys know, I do have a retrospective of Resident Evil 1 dropping this week in the short form, right? So you'll find it under the short section. So I thought it would be appropriate to cover a fellow content creator's retrospective. Agreed, the monsters you can almost get used to, but the fact that no matter what you're up against, your chances of survival dwindle the more resources deplete. Yeah, that always scared me. Because if I was, right, especially in Code Veronica, if you run out of resources, I mean, you're soft-locked. I think CVX is kind of controversial these days, but I don't think it's a bad game at all. Aged a little poorly, maybe? I could agree with that, right? I think that the gameplay itself didn't age poorly. I think maybe adding difficulties would make a huge difference. I think rewriting parts of the story are absolutely necessary, right, for previous audiences and actually new audiences, right? Because you want to appeal to not just the audience of old, but the audience of new. I think the battle mode will be a normal unlock as per normal, but I think a DLC Wesker, get that separate ways mode, we hardly see what he gets up to in the OG. I agree, right? We never really get to see what Wesker's doing behind the scenes except for when he's on screen. And his iconic laugh that I can't do, or my voice will probably crack. All right, so let's take a look over here. Get the music quiet for just 1 second. And I would agree with all of your takes so far, right? I mean, Resident Evil has so many different avenues and so many different ways that it could go. The real question is, where is it going to go? And I think the best way that we could start, right, is to look at the beginning, right? Because Resident Evil 1 was not actually the original survival horror, but it was the birth of what became one of the most popular genres in video game history. So let's go ahead and take a look at our friend Avalanche Reviews and see what he has to say.
I've played a lot of games in my life, like a ridiculous amount of games. And while most of them were solid, positive experiences, only a select few really got to me, really changed the way I look at things and molded me into the person I am today. And above this elite group of experiences, this coalition of personality-shaping events, sits one series. Really the series that started it all for me, Resident Evil. In the coming weeks, we'll be barreling down the long list of numbered entries in one of the most important franchises in gaming to date. A daunting task to be sure, but a task well worth taking on. Today we're starting right smack dab in the beginning, and since I want to cover this series in the same order I first experienced it, we'll be following the game's release schedules and not so much their positions on the timeline. Also, one more small item. We're going to be sticking to the main numbered entries, at least for now. Well, with all that out of the way, I'm Jared from Avalanche Reviews. Welcome to part 1 of the Resident Evil Retrospective.
Okay, so as Jared, right, Avalanche Review stated, he's going to be breaking down multiple Resident Evil games, but he's going to start with where it began. In March of 1996, Resident Evil was born. Oh my god, chills from that intro. What's up, Friggy? How you doing? Haven't seen you in a bit. I hope you're doing well. Gonna have to lurk on my console as my phone has died, so I'm still here, guys. Not a problem, Mr. Tibbs. You know where to find us if you're not able to watch. Now let's see what Jared has to say for a bit, and we'll break down some of the information he gives us.
The 90s were a very experimental time for gaming. While 2D was still a tried and true method for video game creation, 3D was becoming more and more accessible thanks in large part to the 3D powerhouse of its day, Sony's PlayStation. Capcom, looking to bring its Japan-only horror title Sweet Home into this brand new landscape, enlisted the help of Shinji Mikami. This remake eventually grew a little bit too big for its britches, and Biohazard was born, which, let's not mince words here, was a kick-ass name. Biohazard. But sadly, a DOS game had recently registered that title, and thus we received a horror masterpiece by the name of Resident Evil, and along with it, survival horror was born.
So as we could see right here, already starting off, the name Biohazard was trademarked by a different company, or as I like to say, a hardcore band, actually out in the United States, that already trademarked the name Biohazard a couple months before the game's release. I'm great, thank you. So happy to actually catch a live. This is different, MB. No... Bio Carlos. No routing? Not today. We definitely will continue routing. I've been routing Resident Evil 3 Nemesis quite a lot recently, and hopefully we get a no save, no damage any % of that soon. But I wanted to do more discussion of Resident Evil more than anything, because I feel like that is really the cusp of what we do over here, you know? And as we already see, right, Resident Evil took most of its inspiration from Sweet Home. Sweet Home was a game that was already created by Capcom, right? And then they enlisted the help of Shinji Mikami, who prior to this game really didn't do many games, right? And we'll see that. I don't know if he discusses it in this video, but when my short does come out this week, I do discuss, a little bit about a game that he worked on prior to this, and really, where he originated, and kind of like what, a lot of Capcom, right? Capcom was actually failing. They were failing miserably prior to Resident Evil. So much so that they were almost going bankrupt. That's a scary thought, right? Capcom, one of the biggest multi-million-dollar gaming companies, almost bankrupt in the mid-90s. I love this. It's so chill. I appreciate that, Friggy. Thank you. I can't wait for your short. Yeah, that'll be coming out very shortly. But yeah, right? Capcom almost being bankrupt? You almost can't believe it to a certain degree because of how many games they've made now, right? We have, let's think, we have obviously Resident Evil, we have Street Fighter, we have Monster Hunter, we have Mega Man, we have Onimusha, we have Okami, we have, I'm trying to remember all the games that they do have. Probably look at a list. Yeah, that actually was a play on words I didn't even realize. Imagine a giant like Capcom going under. You wouldn't believe it. Hey, Ryan. What's up, everyone? What's up, everybody? How is everyone? We're doing good, Ryan. Thanks for jumping in the stream. Hope you are having a wonderful Monday. But yeah, the fact of Capcom going under, man, that would have changed the outcome of a lot of us. Big Ryan Wood in the building. All right, so let's continue this video and see what Mr. Jared Avalanche has to say.
Resident Evil begins simply enough with the rescue mission. It seems that there have been a rash of brutal murders and assaults in Raccoon City, and the grisly nature of these attacks has people spooked. In response, the Raccoon City Police Department sends in a team of their finest, the Special Tactics and Rescue Team, or STARS for short. The only problem is this elite group has gone missing. We play as either Chris Redfield or Jill Valentine, members of the STARS Alpha Team, whose job it is to find the missing Bravo squad and investigate these strange events. Right off the bat, things aren't looking good, with Bravo Team's helicopter completely destroyed. But things go from bad to worse when the group is attacked by a pack of decayed canines. After losing a member and their only escape method, Alpha Team retreats to a nearby mansion where it's believed they'll be safe. Now, this being a video game, safety is nowhere to be found. What remains of the Alpha Team is tasked with navigating this huge mansion, looking for a way out, and maybe an explanation for the shambling corpses walking the halls.
Okay, so we have a little bit to cover right there, right? We all know the premise of Resident Evil for those that have played it, right? Wouldn't miss it, brother. I appreciate that. Oh my God, Ryan got to comment. That's right. He wasn't able to comment. I'm glad you're able to comment now, right? Resident Evil 1 takes place in July of 1998. STARS Bravo team goes missing in the Arklay Mountains after rumors of cannibalistic activity and members, right, killing random civilians. When their chopper goes down and there's no sight of them, STARS Alpha team, that stars our two main characters, Jill Valentine and Chris Redfield, led by Albert Wesker. The team also has Barry Burton, Brad Vickers, Joseph Frost. Now, right off the bat, we never get an opportunity to really see much of Joseph Frost except for the opening cinematic, him getting devoured by canines. But it probably would have been pretty cool to see what Joseph Frost actually was like as a STARS member, right? He looked like he was a shotgun specialist. Seemed like he was cool. He had that really nice bandana on. Obviously, we know Barry's in love with his Magnum. And we know Jill Valentine and we know Chris Redfield, right? Now, the thing that was so interesting about the differences with Chris Redfield and Jill Valentine was that Jill, right, it was almost like an easier difficulty. You had more item in inventory space, right? You had Barry's help throughout most of the game. You got the grenade launcher, right? These are things that Chris Redfield never was able to obtain. right? Not even if you put in a Game Shark and hacked the game. I think if you tried to equip a grenade launcher, the game crashed. So right off the bat, and it even said underneath Jill's name, if you guys saw, easy, and then Chris Redfield's was hard mode. So Chris, right, he had less item space. He really, the best weapon he could get was probably the shotgun, and I think he could get a Magnum. And like I said, his item space was extremely low. Barry's Magnum. Now, that's the thing, right? Rebecca Chambers, a member of Stars Bravo team, she occurs a lot in this game, reoccurs, right? She is the one that helps out Chris throughout the game. And she starred in Resident Evil 0, which of course we will cover. I was thinking about covering that first, but since we're going with the classic trilogy first, we might as well start fresh from what we truly already know, right? Obviously, Rebecca Chambers was involved in an incident prior to the Spencer Mansion incident. And she made her way over to the Spencer Mansion to meet up with the rest of Stars Bravo team. And already being in hell, she ended up in an even worse hell. Now, I think, for just a second, right, if we think about Resident Evil, okay, let's get some music on while we talk real quick, right? How awesome would it be? Lefty, what's going on? I hope you're doing well. If we talked about a Resident Evil remake, right, because we're going to cover the remake of Resident Evil. If we had a 30th anniversary remake of the original Resident Evil, wouldn't it be cool to see a lot of the Spencer Mansion starting to fall apart? Right? Like the documents that we find scattered around the Spencer Mansion, we actually pick it up and we get to see in real time how the scientists are starting to get overwhelmed by the deadly virus, the outbreak, right? And how a lot of the Umbrella agents that look, that are dressed like Hunk are kind of like running around. What I miss? Base breaking down RE1 for the good of humanity. Yeah, man. Hey, it's a tough job, but somebody's got to do it. Am I right? Now, the question I have for you guys before I continue. What do you want to see? If they do another Resident Evil 1 remake, what are things that you would like to see? Oh, it's horrifying. I would agree, Lucy, right? Because if you think about it, a lot of the documents that are scattered around the Spencer Mansion tell the tale of the fate of a lot of the people inside of here. Just how evil Oswald E. Spencer, right, truly was. How he purposely had George Trevor build a labyrinth-like mansion to hide the Umbrella facility that was located beneath the Spencer Mansion. How the last few scientists barricaded themselves in rooms, terrified to leave as zombies broke down the doors, right? So much so that a few scientists committed because they literally could not deal with the stress. Obviously, I can't say the word on here on YouTube, but you get the gist, right? They didn't want to be infected, so they decided to take a different route. Now, that's the question I have for a lot of you here. If they did make another remake to this game, what would you want to see in it? If you hear me drinking anything, I'm drinking some tea at the moment. Remaking Resi 1 would be sick if we got the intro, like, explaining the story. See, I agree with that, Lefty. Imagine how far we've come with graphics and just, right, cinematics. How incredible that would look. How incredible they could break down this story into actual cutscenes. This game would be like 10 times longer. Probably not 10 times longer, but it'd be longer. It would be really cool, honestly. I think it was already amazing. Maybe have Wesker's campaign as an unlockable. I like that. Right? Because we see Wesker. He stays in the lobby. and then 2 people go missing, right? Or if you're playing as Jill, Wesker just disappears. So we never actually get to see what Wesker's doing unless we play the Umbrella Chronicles, right? Or we've played Resident Evil 0 before and kind of see the events that led up to Wesker being here. In a pro mode. That'd be interesting, right? I hope they keep real survival. But for now, let's continue with this video. Feel free to continue to write in the comments section what you want to see from a new remake of Resident Evil if they do decide to do it. And we're going to continue with this wonderful retrospective.
People often criticize the first RE story with being too campy and cheesy. Now, these people aren't too far off. I mean, there are some serious levels of cheese here.
Ouch! You're wounded!
But this simple story always kind of stuck with me in an interesting and, dare I say it, kind of believable way. Maybe it's the contemporary setting or the juxtaposition between these images of cops investigating a house being viewed right beside gory walking corpses feeding on the living. Either way, I absolutely love it. There's just something about the combination of campy dialogue mixed with a heavy atmosphere and dark tone that really pulls me in and gets me hooked. As far as gameplay is concerned, Resident Evil plays out a lot like an adventure game. Taking cues from both Alone in the Dark and its original inspiration, Sweet Home, RE uses a limited inventory and requires the player to explore a huge area that slowly opens up as keys are found and puzzles are solved. The downside to this style is you'll be backtracking through familiar areas a lot, like a whole lot. But the good news is the backtracking has the added bonus of getting you intimately familiar with the layout in the area you're in. In fact, I'd wager most RE veterans could draw you a map of the entire mansion without much of a problem. A solid eye for level design also benefits this type of exploration, as item boxes and save rooms are often placed in high traffic areas, which means you're never going too far out of your way to progress. These item boxes are key given the limited amount of crap you'll be able to lug around, and the fact that they all share a universal inventory means you'll...
Okay, we got some questions over here. Now we're hearing a lot about Jared explain the limited inventory selection, right? And taking a lot of inspiration from the original 1992 Alone in the Dark, right? On MS-DOS. And also on the 3DO console, right? And really, like, it took pretty much all of its inspiration was Sweet Home and Alone in the Dark. Imagine a DLC showing the fall of the mansion, where we get to experience the facility scientist's final moments as the experiments start to get out of control. I mean, that is what I'm hoping for, right? With what I'm talking about right now, that's perfect, Jem. What I am talking about right now is I would love to see that. If you made that a prime part of your story, right? Prime part of the cinematics, prime part of like a lot of what we've wanted to see, not just in files, right? Reading a random file that's like stuck behind a, library door. I'm talking about like seeing it firsthand, the fall, kind of like what Residents of Evil did on their channel, which was just absolutely fabulous. They're short on the Keeper's Diary, right? The Keeper's Diary is such an important part of Resident Evil 1. And we're going to touch on the Keeper's Diary, right, in a little while. We're going to react to that. That's something we're also going to be doing today. We are going to watch the short from Residents of Evil, and we are going to really dive into that. What would you like to see, NB? It seems like it's your favorite, if I remember. You got that right. Now, my favorite Resident Evil is actually the remake of this. As much as I do enjoy the original, I think that everything that needed to be fixed in the original was done in the remake. I mean, that is just, for me, Resident Evil 1 Remake is still, if not the greatest video game ever made. Now, obviously, that's debatable because there's millions of games out there, right? But it's just incredible to even have Resident Evil in any aspect, presumably 4, right? Because 4 revolutionized video games again. But if you think about it, what list is Resident Evil 4 not in the top 25 greatest video games of all time? I think every list I've ever looked at, and you can fact check me on this, I think every single list that I have ever looked at, Resident Evil 4 has been in the top 25 video games ever created, right? Ever created. Which is pretty interesting. Exactly what I was thinking. The Keeper's Diary is a perfect example of that. Would you maybe add a monster or get rid of one for any reason? That's a really good question. I would get rid of Yawn faster than you could clap your hands. Nah, honestly, me and Yawn have had some battles over the past couple of years since I've been on the platform. And it's just an inside joke that Yawn is my least favorite, probably monster in this game. But I think he's important for the story. I think he's important as like a symbol for Resident Evil 1, right? Because the giant snake, absolutely revolutionary. And I knew Jem would laugh about that. Agreed, says Ryan Wood. Thank you. I know, right? Resident Evil 1 was very revolutionary for its time. And then the next time Resident Evil became absolutely revolutionary was Resident Evil 1 in January of 2005. So much so, right? We're not even covering Resident Evil 1 today, but so much so that games literally restarted production and actually tried to emulate the work behind how Resident Evil 4 played. Dead Space, Gears of War, a lot of those games, even though they might have not have been, right, Resident Evil-esque games, I'd say Dead Space being the closest, they reimagine their games based off of how well Resident Evil 4's numbers did. Because think about it, a year later, right? I think it was a year later, Gears of War came out over the shoulder with a Invasion of the Locusts. And then we had Dead Space, right? With the necromorphs on the ship. I mean, that was just unbelievable. So we really have had Resident Evil, right? When they were really just trying to find ways to not go out of business, they struck gold, right? They captured lightning in a bottle, not once, not twice, but 3 times, I personally think. And we'll get into that at another time. But I think the 3 biggest games in the Resident Evil franchise, not saying the best, right? I'm not saying the best. You could believe they're the best. I'm just saying in general, the 3 biggest games that revolutionized Resident Evil. Resident Evil 1, 1996. Resident Evil 4 in 2005. And Resident Evil 7. Right? Think about that for a sec. OMG, Dead Space was cool. Dead Space is fantastic. And its remake of the first game is phenomenal, right? Those guys over there who made that remake, I really do hope they get the funding and the backing to eventually make a Dead Space 2. I know it didn't sell to the numbers they wanted, but man, was that remake great. Right? We had Resident Evil 1, which introduced survival horror in a 3D platform. We had Resident Evil 4, which revolutionized gaming alone for its time period. And then we had Resident Evil 7 that basically saved the franchise again from a near turmoil. Right? Because we could sit here and we could trash on Resident Evil 6, right? But that was the direction the games were going in that time period. And then Resident Evil 7 in January of 2017 was just unbelievable. It saved it. Oh, absolutely, Lily. Don't you think RE2 was top tier? I couldn't describe to you how much I love Resident Evil 2. Right? I think Resident Evil 2 is probably the best game in the series, right? Like, I love Resident Evil 1 Remake. But if we're looking at a fan perspective, what people would vote for the most, it would be the Resident Evil 2 original or the remake. But me personally, right? Me personally, I think the 3 biggest revolutionary games in Resident Evil, again, were Resident Evil 1 Original, Resident Evil 4 Original, and Resident Evil 7. Absolutely. It was, Lily. But it wouldn't have existed without the legacy of RE1. Absolutely, right? A love letter to Resident Evil 1 was Resident Evil 2. So this is just, conversation for us to have. This is stuff for us to break down. We need to understand what the games were that really solidified keeping Resident Evil conscious in the minds of the players, conscious in the world of gaming, right? Gaming is like everything else. Evolutionary. It changes over time, right? And what Resident Evil was able to do was adapt to the time period it was in. As much as Resident Evil 5 gets hate, it adapted to the time period it was in. Max, what's going on? How you doing? Welcome into the stream. We're talking some Resident Evil 1 today. And Resident Evil in general. It's great to see you here. I just think that it's evolutionary, right? Gaming today. My thing with gaming today, obviously, I don't really think that new games, I think that there's a very small area of games in this day and age that are genuinely the word good. Right, because right now they're throwing out a lot of slop and hoping it sticks. I'm not saying obviously the Resident Evil remakes are fantastic. Silent Hill 2 remakes are fantastic. You got all the Soulsborne games, they're fantastic. And you got a lot more. Even Astrobot is a really good 3D platformer that brought 3D platforming back on the map, right? Black Myth Wukong, right? A Souls-like. You got a lot of games. A lot that I probably won't name in this moment. But you also have so many games that literally are garbage. I'm not going to lie to you guys here, right? As time keeps moving, so will the way that we perceive games. And that's one thing that Resident Evil has always, almost not always, but always has been able to do, is keep up with the times. All right, let's continue on with our retrospective.
You'll never be too far from your stored items. Game-saving typewriters are a key feather in the old survival horror cap as well. Instead of making the game easier, save points add another layer of tactics, since they can only be used by giving up an ink ribbon, which can be found in a very limited supply throughout the game. Of course, dying and losing progress can only be scary if there's something looking to kill you. Combat in Resident Evil consists of planting your feet, taking aim, and blasting away, all while hoping the zombies in front of you die before they get within arm's reach. When compared to the more action-oriented titles, it's easy to see this as archaic, but there's a finesse to staying alive in the Spencer Mansion. First off, combat isn't exactly recommended. Ammo and healing items are in short supply, and what little you have can't all be carried at once. This leads to a very strategic approach to engaging enemies. Often you'll find yourself clearing out tight hallways and leaving the zombies in more open areas alone, as these can be easily maneuvered around with the right understanding of the game's controls. And with that, we come to what some people consider to be the worst part about early Resident Evil games, and the main feature that defines the survival horror genre as a whole. Resident Evil uses tank controls, and what that means is...
Oh boy. Oh boy. I know I keep pausing it at early parts, but very important to talk about. Resident Evil had some atrocities, got that right, to its name. But they all helped to shape the franchise as it is today. Well said, Jem. Resident Evil, right? Resident Evil wasn't always sunshine and rainbows. It had its flops, right? But one thing I paused on, and in the short you'll notice that I do talk about tank controls. Tank controls were something that a lot of people were not fans of, right? Tank controls were as basic as up is up, down is down, left is left, and right is right. But they were so stiff, right? And players were so not used to what a tank control meant. And our buddy Jared here is going to really break it down, right? Tanks chill. But honestly, the controls, Shinji Mikami actually purposely put tank controls into the game to make players feel even more claustrophobic and nervous, right? RE6 cough, yeah. Don't get me started. When I do my RE6 coverage, you are going to see a whole new MAPE. No, but honestly, tank controls were such a pivotal part of the original Resident Evil games. 1, 2, 3, right? Even Code Veronica. Even Resident Evil 4. Think about that for a minute. Resident Evil 4 had a different type of tank controls, but technically up was up and down was down. It had more enjoyable tank controls. That's what made Resident Evil 4 better. Mikami-sensei was a troll, you better believe that. He was. He knew what he was doing, right? And sometimes, even if he didn't know what he was doing, experimentation, just like Kojima-san over with Metal Gear Solid, right? Some of the best pieces of artwork that we've gotten in gaming history came from just experimenting. And I think that was really important what Jared said about picking and choosing what you shoot and what you kill in original games, right? If you have a very tight hallway and you can't get around zombies and you don't want to get bit, you got to take care of them. But if you got a little bit wider of an area, you got to pick and choose where you're going to use that ammo and when. That is so important. I can't stress that enough. Coming from a guy who does challenge runs, no damage runs, right? Or just is a veteran of the series, picking and choosing what you kill and when is so important. Did they choose tank controls on purpose? Yes, they did. Shinji Mikami actually said in an interview he chose tank controls for this purpose. Number one, it was experimentation. But number two, it gave that sense of nerve-wracking dread, right? Trying to evade a monster when the camera is fixed in one point and your character literally moves to the way opposite of whatever the camera angle is. Now, for instance, if a tank control is you moving up by pressing the directional up or down, right? Left, right, and the camera angle's fixed like what we're seeing on the screen right now, it might be a lot harder to navigate if there's like 3 zombies in this hallway. So yeah, yes, absolutely. To your answer, Lily, I do believe they were done on purpose. It's almost incredible to even think that. Definitely made it harder to feel safe in a tight hallway. I agree, Max, right? Because if you're in a hallway like this, what we have on the screen, and you got to get around a bunch of zombies there, you have no choice but to fight. Or to learn their patterns, right? Because the thing about Resident Evil that's so special is the repetition, right? The replay value of these games, especially the original Resident Evils. I've probably played these games thousands of times now. They have that replay factor to keep on learning. Unbelievable. Let's continue on.
Up and down on the PlayStation D-pad will always move the character up or down relative to the direction they're facing. Left and right, instead of moving the character left or right, are used to pivot the character in those directions. Now, some people tend to find this method of control really hard to grasp, and you can just chalk that up to preference. One thing I would like to clear up is a very common misconception. In fact, it's one that even I've been guilty of. See, tank controls were not used in Resident Evil as a means to increase tension. Now, I know you've heard this a lot, but Capcom wasn't trying to purposely make the game harder or scarier by way of the controls. The fact of the matter is, tank controls existed in Alone in the Dark, and since Resident Evil used the same exact static camera angles, tank controls were just the best option to go with. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm sure this added the side effect of increased tension or difficulty, but this was certainly not the intent of the developers. And with that rant out of the way, let's talk about the genius of this game's visuals. At the time, heavily detailed 3D graphics were about weighing your options. You could either have the environment.
Now, I find that interesting, right? Because as much as I do agree with Jared, right, that maybe limitations for the PlayStation were very tough and tank controls were the route to go, I do believe, and there is interviews with Shinji Mikami, that say that he chose tank controls for this reason, to make it even more scary for us. There's a whole debate on that, whether tank controls were actually important. Right? So a lot of people have that thing where there's that conversation whether tank controls were on purpose or it was just due to limitations what they had to use. Now, I do think that it had to do with limitations, right? I'm not crazy here. Well, for the most part, it definitely had to do with that. Nicholas, what's going on, my friend? Welcome to the stream. I hope you are doing well. We are discussing Resident Evil 1 today. And that's the thing, right? There is so much conversation on so many small little aspects of Resident Evil that you could sit here for a month talking about them. I personally choose to think that Mikami was honest with what he was saying, and they purposely chose tank controls. But now we're going to get into a little bit more about what he's talking about with the different key items. So let's see what our good friend Jared has to say.
Or your character models pushing lots of polygons, not both. Deciding instead to use static camera angles, the devs were free to use pre-rendered CG images as backgrounds and spend all the system's resources on the few amount of 3D objects on screen. This had the amazing effect of allowing the 3D models to really pop when viewed against the 2D backgrounds. Of course, it also gave the team full control of the camera, which resulted in the cinematic look that the series was known for. Long hallways often have far-off angles, and close spaces feel even more claustrophobic thanks to a keen eye for camera placement. Sometimes these angles can hide enemies around corners or just out of sight, and to combat this, each genetically altered corpse and bioorganic monster has a telltale audio cue. Whether it's zombies' iconic moan or the clicking of a hunter's claws on the ground, a careful player should never be caught off guard. Should being the keyword there. But enough about the camera angles, let's talk about these glorious, amazingly detailed pre-rendered backdrops. Okay, so maybe my inner fanboy might have oversold them a bit, but at the time, you just didn't get any better than this. Every room, hallway, and experimental laboratory looks amazingly detailed and full of life, no pun intended. Even years after my first time playing this game, I'm still finding little things I never really noticed. Of course, upscaling the
Now, that's something I could talk Resident Evil forever. You got that right, Max, right? I could talk Resident Evil every single day of every week. So, something that Jared just touched on, right? The pre-rendered backgrounds. The pre-rendered backgrounds were so unbelievable. They honestly, to me, the pre-rendered backgrounds told the story, right? Just in the backgrounds. The rooms, the detail, right? Even if it's just a JPEG picture, right? That they used as an asset. Everything that we see in a room tells the tale of something before. That zombie in the small hallway was one of the most likely enemies to hit me back when I speedran Resident Evil 1 no save. Yeah. That zombie is notorious. Get it? No pun intended. That zombie is notorious for literally damaging speedruns. I love the attention to detail, particularly seeing things in the mansion from upstairs or the RPD from the second floor. Absolutely, right? Because you got to see from a view. And just be able to see, right, like, as graphic as this sounds, blood spatter on the wall or blood spatter on the ground, or just how eerie the mansion hallways looked. And, right, stuff like that kind of originated in Alone in the Dark and things like that. But, man, Capcom took it to the next level. You felt like you were being told a story just from the rooms you were in, just from the locations. No game did that before. We're talking about the mid-90s, folks, right? Resident Evil 1 had been in development since like late 1993, I think. Because originally it was going to be on the Super Nintendo. You could even fact check me on that. Originally. I never even realized they were 2D backdrops as a kid. I know, right? Because back then we had no idea. We really didn't. As kids, I would watch my dad play this, right? Like I was too young to watch him play this exact one, but obviously he would replay it as I got older, and then when I got to play it, I couldn't believe the detail. I was just playing a bit of RE6. It lets you take control of creatures in Agent Hunt. You are hunting people in campaign. That's pretty interesting, right? I feel like the extra game modes of Resident Evil 6 were better than its campaigns. I didn't dislike Leon's. I just didn't have a lot of fun with the other ones. Right? I think that Resident Evil they are very good at being able to help you tell a story just from the room you're in, and that is so powerful. Unbelievable work. You can't get over how good this is. Oh, Serenity just came out from Resident Evil 2, but we will save that for right after our next pause. Let's continue on with what our man Jared has to say.
Game via the FrameMeister makes compression artifacts much more noticeable, but that's to be expected for a game that's more than 2 decades old. Without a doubt, these backgrounds played a pivotal role in helping a 13-year-old me get completely immersed in this experience. Now, these well-designed environments may have contributed to the dark atmosphere, but if there's one thing that cranked the fear knob to 11, it's the game's soundtrack. Since the game was split 90% exploration, 10% adrenaline-pumping combat, RE's OST is filled with dreary, ominous-sounding tracks that straddle the line between peaceful-sounding melodies and off-key tones. This combination makes for a real feeling of unease, but the most amazing part is how well each song fits the environment you hear it in. Long, poorly lit hallways have slow, dark-sounding string accompaniments, and the overgrown guardhouse track sounds thick and mysterious. But sadly, this only applies to the original release of the game. The subsequent Director's Cut and DualShock re-releases of RE came with a tweaked soundtrack featuring some orchestral tracks.
All right, we're going to touch on the soundtrack here for a bit because there's a lot to dive into. Let's see what Mr. Ryan Wood said. In my humble opinion, I believe that any game that molds a generation of gamers makes GOAT status. Absolutely. For instance, what we have in the gaming world without the first need for speed games? Yeah, you're right? If we didn't have like Gran Turismo or Need for Speed or games like that, right? We wouldn't have games like Forza Horizon and some of like the newer games that came out, right? The really Midnight Clubs, games like that. Well said, man. Really well said. There are games that define, right, a genre. There are games that mold into GOAT status, as Ryan Wood said. I love the music, yes, and that's something we're going to talk about right now, right? And I think Jared over at Avalanche Reviews said it best. Resident Evil was 90% exploring when we were younger, and still today. 10% adrenaline rushing combat, and then, right, the soundtracks. Some of the OSTs in every Resident Evil, I don't actually think there's a bad OST in really any Resident Evil. Even Survivor's got some of its bangers, right? Even Resident Evil 6 has some good songs. What is so important for a game is its soundtrack, right? Because it sets the mood. It sets the tone of what the game is going to be like. When Resident Evil 1 came out, I had already played through generations 3 and 4 of console gaming. Wow, okay. So you had a chance to really, really see games prior to, right, 3D polygon rendering. Yeah, the soundtrack for these games really sell the atmosphere. Absolutely, Lily. Now, let's touch on the soundtrack. I don't actually know who the composer was. I got to look at the information. We'll probably look at that right after this video before we go and check out the Keeper's Diary. But there was a big speculation about the Resident Evil 1 soundtrack. It wasn't even a speculation. It was proven true. That the original composer of the Resident Evil 1 soundtrack was a fraud. Right? Originally believed to be deaf, he actually wasn't deaf. He actually had somebody else composing the music for him. He actually didn't really even know how to make music well. He did make music, but it wasn't these soundtracks. Thus, right, we had already had Resident Evil and then the director's cut that kept the original soundtracks, but after Capcom found out the news and all that news came out, right, and it was a huge thing, Resident Evil 1, the greatest hits version of the director's cut came out. And we had probably one of the greatest songs of all time, arguably a song that I would like to be played at my wedding, right? Let's just take a look. So basically what ended up happening was the entire soundtrack was changed. Some rooms had a couple of the same songs, but man, did we have a banger come out. If I'm at my wedding or I'm at my funeral and I'm not being lowered into the casket with this playing, I'm going to be mad. I'm going to be really mad. And I'm serious, Lucy. This is an actual song from the DualShock Director's Cut version. Yeah, my ears are already bleeding. I don't know if I could continue listening to it, but you get the drift, right? The soundtrack had such a pivotal impact on what Resident Evil 1 was, and then when the director's cut came out, it had almost nearly a different soundtrack that literally sounded like tambourines smashing and farting at the same time. Exactly. If this doesn't play at my funeral, I'm not going. I think they call that a ghostwriter. Correct, Nicholas. Correct. 100%. Right? He had a ghostwriter. What was his name, right? What the heck was original composer of RE1 soundtrack? Can we find out this gentleman's name? Man, they like scrapped everything that had to do with this guy, right? Let's see. Original RE1 composer. Oh, there he is. Samuragochi. This guy right here. Mamoru Samuragochi, right? He is known for the Resident Evil Director's Cut version and Unimusha Warlords. Right? So this guy right here, he had a ghostwriter. He was a fraud. This soundtrack has that relative just drank the 10th beer vibe, and I'm not a fan of alcohol myself. You got that right, dude. I'm not a big fan of alcohol over here. Hello, I have arrived. Welcome in, Noble. Welcome in. Can we listen to Safe Haven to make us all feel better? Yeah, I could do that for you. Hang on. But that's the thing, right? The soundtrack. Hold on, I gotta put in Resident Evil, right? Oh, man. Just such a better song, right? I think that Mikami realized that all the backlash they got from him having a ghostwriter. Yeah, exactly. I'm not a fan of alcohol either, but Basement Theme, I really need a little bit of whiskey to last, just to slam back. Because that is honestly why the DualShock Director's Cut is actually it's very cheap still in the United States. You could actually buy the game for like $40 US, which is cheap for a Resident Evil 1 copy, because the game goes for around $100. It's like getting into a warm bubble bath, right? This is such a good song. It's so relaxing. This and Serenity, I love the rainy mood feel ones that they have up here. I mean, there are just some really talented YouTubers up here that make versions of these songs that are just unbelievable, right? Unbelievable. Frightfully cheap. To me, right, this is such a good song. And we got to give it a like. But let's go back over here, right? So let's, as we were talking, right? And it's great to have all of you here. I'm glad that everybody is really enjoying this. Just as movies hold an almost timeless enjoyment, games do. I couldn't imagine my early childhood without Mario. And that was really basic. All these classics will still be loved in another 20 years. Oh, Ryan, man, you are spitting nothing but facts tonight, man. Damn. You're right. Right? I grew up in the age of like Mario 64. So I was already a little late to the game just because of my age, right? But the original Marios, playing them, they were so ahead of their time in their soundtracks, right? They were really and the games were fantastic. So simple, yet so intricate, yet so fun, yet so addicting. And I agree with you. Yeah, don't go telling Aunt Rhodey. Do not go telling Aunt Rhodey. She ain't going to be happy. It's because I'm old. Trust me, my brother, I'm not that far behind anymore. But honestly, the Resident Evil soundtracks, just to round this little tangent up right now, are such a pivotal part of what makes Resident Evil Resident Evil. And it's almost hysterical that this guy was a fraud. He had a ghostwriter, and then we ended up getting that garbage. We got garbage. Super Metroid had a banger soundtrack, Noble. You got that right. Oh, absolutely. All right, let's continue on with our man Jared. Let's see what he's offering us to end this.
Tracks and total re-recordings of classic songs. There tends to be a bit of contention as to whether or not this is some kind of blasphemy, and even though I actually like a lot of the new recordings, you're better off aiming for the original black box release. Either that or make peace with the idea of listening to this auditory abortion.
It found us again, the song.
And since we're talking about re-releases, if you're having issues finding a copy of the first Resident Evil game, well, let's just say you might not be trying hard enough. Now, if I went over every single port and re-release of the game, we would be here for eternity, but there is one we have to talk about. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to the one and only reason I purchased a GameCube.
Right, so we're not going to talk about the Resident Evil 1 remake just yet, right? Because we're focusing on Resident Evil 1 Classic. So this is where we're going to let our friend Ryan go, not Ryan, sorry buddy, our buddy Jared go for a little bit. And we're going to focus on the Resident Evil 1 remake once we touch on the remakes. I had this weird theory. No, it's happening again. I had this weird theory at 10 that the future of gaming was a system which showed the characters in a dome to give you full 3D. It sounds great for fighting games. Also an unrealistic idea looking back. I mean, back then when we were younger, it wasn't really that unrealistic, right? I think that's what made things so perfect, right? Looking through a kid's eye, right? Everything was rose-tinted. Everything we did, every memory we had with a person that made us feel special, whether it was a parent, whether it was a sibling, whether it was a significant other, right? As we got older, everything that we see, right, it kind of emulates how we remember it, right? If we had a bad reaction to something, we're probably not going to remember the thing in a good light, whether it's a game or not. My eyes, my eyes. I know it's auditory, but my eyes are still bleeding. Honestly, yeah. Damn, Mario 1 Remake looks so clean after seeing it beside the OG. Yeah, I mean, when we touch on the RE1 Remake, you guys know I'm going to roll out the red carpet for that one. RE1 DS port is the best. Yes, Deadly Silence to me, and that's something that Noble knows, is my personal favorite version of Resident Evil 1. And again, as Jared said in the video, there are so many different ways to play this game. It came out on the Sega Saturn too, right? Later in the console generation of Saturn, which didn't really have a very strong library to begin with, right? We had... Let's see. We had it for PS1. We had a couple of different copies. The original long box, the director's cut, and then the greatest hits director's cut. Then we had the remakes. Then we had a DS port much later on. You guys made me wonder how Resident Evil would feel as a child protagonist. Yeah, right? Honestly, the closest we've gotten to a child protagonist was Sherry for a little bit in Resident Evil 2, and probably Rose, right? Because she was still a teenager, you know, in Shadows of Rose, the DLC. At least 50% of enjoyment I get from Resident Evil games was watching my home slice bossing through them. You know who you are, bro. Yeah, we know who he is. We see him in these comment sections. Right? But Resident Evil... What happened to the music? We have Serenity queued up for us. Oh, man. Sorry about that. Yeah. I touched on the Sega Saturn version 100%. But the Sega Saturn version, I don't know if you guys know, right? For my friends in the stream that don't live in the United States, the Sega Saturn version of Resident Evil 1 is very expensive, right? If you want it complete, it's probably close to $300. Unfortunately, some people in the community turn into clowns when you bring up the DualShock version. There is this brain-dead talking point that it was bad. Now that's, and I would agree with you, the DualShock version is not bad, right? It's not bad. Some of the reworked music is actually very good, right? And I said that a little bit earlier on in the stream that it was actually pretty good, right? It added advanced mode, which was like a hard mode, and the camera angles were different in the game, which I could, show you guys. Sorry about that, babe. Kendo for the win. Who thought that was terrifying, playing a child fleeing a full-blown I know. Honestly, though, and that's one thing that I talk about. I have it on my YouTube channel right now, the Resident Evil short for 1.5. The Chief Irons wasn't always the creepy weirdo that we see in Resident Evil 2. He actually was just a normal chief that was infected and laying on the couch in 1.5. And Leon, it was not his first day on the job. So they took an entire different routing once they told Hideki Kamiya, sir, please step out of the way while we get somebody to write the new story. Yeah, the basement music. If they played the basement music while Sherry was running away from Chief Irons, I feel like that is the best situation for that. Right? Oh my goodness. Ryan makes a great point. The Sherry section with Chief Irons was arguably the most disturbing part of the game. It was very unsettling, right? It almost not only was the town completely fallen, but the people in it were crazy too. That's something that The Walking Dead did well for a while until the show and if you guys are Walking Dead fans here, this is no shot at Walking Dead. I love The Walking Dead. But what Walking Dead did was show you that not just the zombies are something you have to worry about, it was the humans that you had to worry about. And I think that you nail that on the head right there, right? And Ryan made a really good point with just talking about Chief in general, that the humans themselves were pretty terrifying people. That is spot on. Nah, you're right though. Yeah, right? Because like humans from what we've seen right through the dawn of time have done some really subjectable things, right? I don't need to go into detail, but I mean, come on. I think Irons was petrifying. Yeah, he was terrifying, and like just the way they wrote him and how he had all of the animal heads, like he was a hunter on the walls, right? And he would hunt people. I mean, it was a very terrifying story. I'd take zombies over humans any day. See, I agree with Gemini on that one. Because if the world became post-apocalyptic, humans would probably be more terrifying than the monsters we'd have to fight. Totally agree. And I think that's so important. Now, we're going to go over to our buddies ROE, Residents of Evil, and we're going to check out the Keeper's Diary. For all of my friends in here that have not had a chance to see the Keeper's Diary, you are going to get to see it today. If I don't just, show you guys the credits. I'm going to be honest, we don't need an RE1 remake. That's not just a bold statement, because I don't disagree with you, right? Because I think most of us in here and most Resident Evil fans that are true Resident Evil fans feel the same way, right? The RE1 remake did the job, and then those of us that literally love Resident Evil original, right? Like, we don't need another remake. What we want is the remakes that haven't been done yet. We need a Zero remake. We need a Code Veronica remake. And hell, honestly, at this point, since we already did 4, give us a 5 remake that does not kill Wesker. I started rewatching The Walking Dead a few months ago. I finished all 13 original seasons, some side series, plus 7 seasons of Fear the Walking Dead. Fear the Walking Dead was pretty good, right, for a while. I liked it. I didn't watch all 13 seasons of The Walking Dead, but I will say, like, the first 5 seasons, man, they were some of the greatest TV had to offer. ROE did such a crazy job with this. Over 304K views, with the video is criminally underrated, and I agree. I don't know how it's not at 1 million now. Right? So, just to give a little backstory to our friends here that are new to the Resident Evil franchise, the Keeper's Diary is a letter that is found in a room, right? The Keeper's room, inside of the Resident Evil 1 mansion. It was typed up on a typewriter, and it was basically just kind of like documentation of his final days, right? The keeper of like the animals and the dogs and stuff like that. Revive Wesker for the win. Absolutely, right? Like, why would you kill your main bad guy? Right? Like, I can understand killing Nemesis in 3, right? Because he was made for that game. But to kill the overall overarching protagonist, I'm going to be honest with you guys, I still don't even know who the main protagonist is in the new Resident Evil line. Right? We get in each game it was Mother Miranda, right? It was Mia, it was this and that, but who is the overarching bad guy? Right? This is a good conversation today, guys. I'm so happy to have you all here with me. You guys truly are unbelievable people. This is my first time seeing this. Well, you're in for one heck of a treat, Fridgie, because I am not going to unpause the video until the very end. We're going to watch it fully through. I'm not going to break anything down until the end of the video. It's a 20-minute video. I want you guys to buckle in. I want you guys to subscribe to Residents of Evil for their hard work. I love JJ and those guys. Wesker's a badass. Could it be Spencer? Hey. Right? I mean, as far as we saw in the Resident Evil 2, the Resident Evil 5 Lost in Nightmares DLC, right? Wesker kills Oswald Lee Spencer because apparently he was still alive in that DLC. But we don't know, right? We don't know who the overarching villain is anymore. Is Blue Umbrella going to become Meanville? I mean, who knows, right? So without further ado, to the people in this call, we are going to watch The Keeper's Diary, a Biohazard story. Please enjoy yourselves, and we will discuss it at the end. You guys could feel free to comment any questions you have, and I will be happy to answer them once the video is over. And again, let's get right into this.
The Keeper's Diary, a Biohazard story.
May 9th, 1998. Played poker tonight with Scott and Elias from security. And Steve from research.
Five of spades.
I check.
I check.
I'm all in.
I fold.
I call. All in.
What you got?
Pair of fives.
Full house. Queens over aces.
It's 4 aces.
No way.
Hey, what can I say?
Steve was the big winner, but I think he was cheating.
Sorry.
Scumbag. May 10th, 1998. One of the higher-ups assigned me to take care of a new creature.
Commence with the procedure.
Looks like a skinned gorilla. Feeding instructions were to give it live animals. When I threw in a pig, the creature seemed to play with it, tearing off the pig's legs and pulling out the guts before it actually started eating.
Good. Very good. Seal it off.
May 11th, 1998. At around 5 a.m., Scott woke me up. Scared the shit out of me, too.
Hey, Scott, open up. Let me in.
Are we at war? He was wearing a protective suit.
There's been an accident in the lab. I need you to wear this from now on. Do you understand?
Wait, what? He handed me another one and told me to put it on. Said there'd been an accident in the basement lab. Is everything okay?
I'm not sure. But if anyone asks, you didn't get that from me.
I just knew something like this would happen. Those bastards in research never sleep. Even on holiday. May 12th, 1998. I've been wearing the damn spacesuit since yesterday. My skin's getting grimy and it feels itchy all over. Goddamn dog's been looking at me funny. So I decided not to feed him today. Screw him. May 13th, 1998. I went to the infirmary because my back is all swollen. It feels itchy.
Looks like scarring.
They put a big bandage on it and told me I didn't need to wear the suit anymore.
If you keep scratching it, it's gonna keep getting worse. Give it some time to heal. Here, take this twice a day. You'll notice it start to get better. And this is for the pain.
his sleep. May 14th, 1998. Found another big blister on my foot this morning. I ended up dragging my foot all the way to the dog's pen. They were quiet all day, which is weird. Then I realized some of them had escaped. Maybe this is their way of getting back at me for not feeding them the last 3 days. If anybody finds out, I'll have my head handed to me.
Sir, it's not safe out here. Go back to your room.
Look, sir. There's another one.
May 16th, 1998. Rumors going around that a researcher who tried to escape the estate last night was shot. My entire body feels hot and itchy, and I'm sweating all the time now. I scratched the swelling on my arm, and a piece of rotten flesh dropped off. What the hell's happening to me? Fever gone, but itchy. Today, hungry. And eat doggy food. Itchy. Itchy.
Hey, it's your buddy, Scott.
Scott came.
Buddy, you don't look so good. You're gonna need to come with me, okay?
Ugly face, so killed him.
Poor bastard.
Wow. Just wow. Unbelievable work by a channel so passionate about Resident Evil. Now, to address something that our buddy Nicholas has said earlier on, Residents of Evil and me have not been on good terms since he defended a few of the moderators who were aggressive towards people who are gay. Now, number one, over here at the Notorious Base, we accept anybody, right? Anybody of all colors, genders, whoever you are always welcomed on this channel, and we love you for it. I cannot condone nor defend, right, any sort of behavior that may be negative in that light. But also, we need to remember that what they were able to accomplish in this content, right? hopefully doesn't change the outlook on what we have for Resident Evil and what they have accomplished. Now, that being said, I wanted to address that first and foremost, and I'm sorry, Nicholas, that you had that experience because you did not deserve it. And I truly do believe that the guys over at Residents of Evil are good people. Maybe it was just a situation that maybe they can't defend. Maybe they need to look at themselves, right? And maybe all of us need to look at ourselves sometimes and realize the words that come out of our mouths and how powerful they can be. So again, I am always neutral when it comes to a standpoint like this, but I am sorry about your experience and hope that you could still find enjoyment. So, to get on with the rest of our discussion, I hope you guys really enjoyed The Keeper's Diary, a biohazard story. Francis, welcome to the stream, my brother. How are you? Freaking wow, GG's for Charlie's acting. Now, just so everybody here knows, right? The main character of A Keeper's Diary is Charlie Kowalski. He was actually the Chris Redfield in the original Resident Evil 1, right? In the live-action opening cutscene. Charlie Kowalski is a great man. I'm friends with him on Facebook. He loves the Resident Evil franchise and the fandom, right? He absolutely adores the people in it. And he does everything he can to continue with Resident Evil and make it a wonderful experience. Absolutely masterful, right? And I thought that video, that short film, was incredible. An incredible discussion of a man that was slowly turning from his humanity to a monster. This documents how the virus slowly cripples and mentally fatigues the infected so well, Gemini says. That was fantastic, right? I would totally agree with that. We love the Notorious Base and each other. This is lovely. This was like watching a movie together. Absolutely, Lily. We love anybody that comes into our stream. We don't condone others, right? And make maybe their decisions, but we could condone what we choose to do. And I know from my experiences with Residents of Evil, these guys are nothing but professional and wonderful people. So that being said, let's talk about this a little bit. Right? We got to see Wesker. Wesker, that was an absolute treat. Let's get a little music on in here. Right? That was an absolute treat to see Wesker. We got to see a hunter. I mean, that hunter was just, the CG was like top notch. I think that was better than an actual Hollywood movie. And honestly, right? Big love, Notorious Base. I appreciate that, Max. I choose to love everyone, and I love Resident Evil, right? That would be my motto. Great, Lily. I love that. The profound impact in the projects that they're working on with a new project, Resident Evil Resurrection, that'll star Charlie Kowalski as well, is going to be one for the books. CGI on that hunter was impeccable. And Wesker's voice, that guy really did a good job. This video deserves over 500,000 views. Should be at 1 million in my eyes. But man, The Keeper's Diary is a story that we have all wanted to know for so long, and they made it a real one. They made it true. What are your thoughts? It seems like everybody in here really, really enjoyed it. So as we've been covering Resident Evil 1 today, we've learned a lot about it, right? That if they do a remake, they have a lot of things that they have to cover. Cinematics is so huge in video games now. I'd watch a series of these, says Gemini. I totally agree with you, Gem. That's why I hope they say they're doing a mini-series for Resident Evil Resurrection, and you better believe I will be first in line. This is truly just a work of art, right? And also, for those of my friends that love Capcom games, not just Resident Evil, there is a little sneak peek at the end of this trailer that I think it's important that we play for our friends in here. What a lovely homage to the franchise. I thought it was amazing, says Lily the cat. I totally agree, right? Really, really well done. illustrating the story of what happens before it. It was expert work. This took months, almost a year or two for them to actually make just this, right? We sit here and we look, and we know a lot of people, right, that do a lot of editing, content creating, right, that really put their heart and soul into it. And you could sit there for hours and days working on something, and the video's 20 minutes. But that 20 minutes is so important because you have put your soul into that work. And I am proud to call these guys some of the hardest workers I've seen, not just in Resident Evil, but in video games, right? They just took it to a different world. But what I'm going to show you next is at the end of this trailer. At the end of this video, we got ourselves a trailer. Congrats on the short film, and to any see more of the specialty projects to come. Am I right, y'all? And just Resi Evil fan myself, as a preteen since 1997, give this props. Absolutely, man, right? A Resi fan since the beginning. We got a day one fan. It was so dark. It must have been such a monumental effort to bring it together so nicely. I agree, Friggy. Couldn't have said it better myself. And I saw when you first said hunk, right? Like hunk is literally the personification of me, right? Like, not to get like really attached, right? But hunk has meant so much to me in Resident Evil. The unknown, right? Human unit never killed is what hunk stands for. Okay? Hunk is the Grim Reaper, a faceless man. And that's what I try to be when I do these runs. Without making it corny, I truly love Hunk. And I truly love every time we see an Umbrella agent in an outfit, how much we think it's Hunk, right? And what's amazing is that Hunk was trained on Rockford Island, where Resident Evil Code Veronica takes place. And guess who his buddy was? I wouldn't say buddy, but somebody that he trained against. Nikolai from Resident Evil 3. They were rivals. Almost like he did it with no save, no damage. Exactly. Hunk, a.k.a. Mr. Death, the Grim Reaper. Absolutely, right? He's so good. Bro, Hunk is you. That means a lot to me, Friggy. Seriously, man. Thank you. Thank you. I don't want to get emotional over here, but Resident Evil has had such an impact on my life and who I am as a man, that without this franchise, and without some of the other franchises like Silent Hill and Metal Gear Solid, I don't know who I would be. I love Resident Evil, and I would do something like this. I wish I had the funds and the means to make a content like Residents of Evil. Never knew that about Hunk and Nikolai. Yeah, pretty interesting stuff. You could actually find Hunk's diary as well in Code Veronica. Resident Evil is more than just a video game, my friends. It's a way of life. So now I just want to go ahead and show you a trailer that is played at the end of this video that I think a lot of you Capcom fans will enjoy someday, bro. You better believe it, Lefty. One day, man, one day, we're going to make ourselves a Resident Evil video that nobody will believe. I truly do want that. So I want to show you guys this really fast. Okay. So Darren Calderon played, right? We had a couple of the guys. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and play this trailer. Brother Bass is the new and improved Hunk in any live streamers on YouTube today. Oh, man, thank you so much, man. Come on now. You're making me blush, man. I appreciate that, man. Thank you. Thank you. I love Hunk, man, and I love Resident Evil, as I've said a trillion times over, and I love you guys for being here today with me, right? Sometimes it is so hard to be able to stream. Sometimes we have such busy lives, but when I have a group like you that just motivates me and pushes me, and I can't talk any more higher than I am right now for you guys, my community. Thank you so much, really. My buddy Gemini, my right-hand man, right? Mr. Tibbs, these guys, without them, I would not be doing what I do, and I love these guys to death. Thank you, guys. Now, let's check out this trailer at the end, because we have a little bit more Resident Evil 1 to discuss. Let me know what you guys think of this trailer.
Regina, I've gained access to the control room.
Well, that was quick. Those shutters back there.
Piece of cake. Leave it to me.
Regina, any sign of Kirk?
I'm afraid not, sir.
Keep sweeping the area. He can't be far.
All right. These monitors ought to spill the secrets on Kirk's location. Mirror, mirror on the wall. Who is the brainiest of them all? Wait.
What is it?
You're not alone.
What an incredible trailer. But first off, I need to stand right now and thank Lefty Bear 87 for the donation. That is so wholesome of you, and I thank you. Any contribution means so much to me. When I tell you that I don't do this for any sort of money, right? I do this because I truly love what I do here. The contributions also mean just so much to me because it shows me that people truly have a passion and love for the stuff I do. So Lefty Bear, thank you so much. With a message, love to see this, NB. Small contribution for you. What a guy, man. What a guy. Big wins all around today. Now, right, to talk about that ending trailer, it looks like we're getting ourselves a Dino Crisis short film by Residents of Evil. Now, that's pretty interesting, huh? That is something that, you know, a lot of Capcom fans have been wanting to see, right, for a long time. Is Dino Crisis, right? We need a Dino Crisis remake. Where is it? We're getting Unimusha. We're getting Okami 2. Where is Dino Crisis? Now, I know I'm waiting for Dino Crisis, but where the hell is Resident Evil 9? So, yeah, guys, stay tuned, right? Because this week, whether it's today, tomorrow, or Wednesday, I will be dropping a Resident Evil 1 retrospective as a short. And I can't wait for you guys to see that because I work so hard on it. We work so hard on it. Albert Wesker speaking. But anything like this, I really enjoy and plenty more, am I right? Carlos, wake up! Wake up! Cannot wait for this one. Dino Crisis is going to be something special, folks. So, if we look at Charlie Kowalski, right? Let's look up Charlie Kowalski really quick. Man, I am butchering his freaking name, right? Oh my gosh. The man right here. Okay? Right on the right side. Let me click on this picture. Boom. The original Chris Redfield from the live action, and this is him on set for Resident Evil Resurrection. Carlos. So we touched on a lot of Resident Evil 1 today, okay? I loved it. I loved everything we're doing now. Yeah. Dino freaking Crisis, my dudes. I'm going to be live again this Thursday. And we're going to be diving into another retrospective of a fan favorite, Resident Evil 2 original. So any questions, any comments that you want to save up and you want to remember for one of the most pivotal games in any franchise that changed the direction of where we are today, I want you guys to save it up. And I want you guys to be ready for it. Okay? Same time this Thursday with Resident Evil 2's retrospective and conversation. Awesome stuff, man. Really awesome stuff. You guys have been so wonderful tonight. Oh, man, I know, right? Resident Evil 2, that's going to be one hell of a conversation, Lily. I want to thank all of my friends that are not from the U.S. for staying up so late to watch this stream. You don't know how much this means to me, to all of my supporters, to all of my community, right? The Notorious Space is for you. And I will see you guys at that time. If you want to join the Discord is in my bio of my YouTube channel. We will welcome you in with open arms, as we welcome anyone that has love in their heart and love for the game. Thank you guys so much for being a part of this stream tonight, and I will see you Thursday, 6:30. This is your host, the Notorious Base. Signing off. I'm down for that. Can't wait to see you live, MB. I'm sorry for coming so suddenly evening. It is now 6:38 p.m. in North Dakota. Took third place in ice fishing. Congratulations, tournament brothers and sisters. But at least I got a medal. Third place, man. That is tough, right? That is awesome. You received a medal. And remember, 6:30 Eastern Standard Time, my friends. Congratulations to you, Francis. I am happy you walked away with a medal. That is hard work. I will see you guys 6:30 Eastern Standard Time this Thursday with more Resident Evil 2 conversation. The Notorious